Hi, welcome to Talk About the Passion. I was working on this episode over the weekend as I had wanted to talk about this particular Straw Dogs record for a while. It's in this pile of records I have right here to eventually talk about at some point. But this one I kind of wanted to hit it for whatever reason. So I was working on it yesterday, and by working on it, I mean, a lot of times when I do these episodes on a record, I'll try to find, relevant information on the record that I might not know. Photos, pictures of the, different versions of the record, like on cassette or that kind of thing. And so it does take a little while to put some of that stuff together. So I took a break yesterday, and I went on Instagram, and the first thing I see is John Sox posting that original bass player for the FUs, Wayne Maestri, has passed away. And forgive me if I pronounce his last name wrong. So, I initially was thinking, should I not post this video? Or just should I wait? And then I thought, why would be the point of that? When people in the hardcore scene die or are, stricken with something like cancer or any kind of thing, like, their house burns down or something, whether it's the local scene here in Boston, which is, very small, and it always has been, at least of a certain age of, an age group of people. It's a tight circle of people. And, but even in the bigger, the hardcore scene, people come together, whether it's to, help financially or, help like showing up at someone's house to help them do things that, if they're not able to because they're sick, or, when people pass away, a lot of times people just want to talk about the person. And because that helps the grieving process a lot. Tell stories, funny stories, anecdotes, whatever. I think talking about someone, it helps. And I think while they're alive, as well, for, if someone's not doing well, to sort of push them and not push them, but give them positive thoughts. A lot of people, when they're struggling with something like cancer, some people keep it private, which I saw John Sox had mentioned that's what Wayne, he said his girlfriend wanted him to keep it private until he passed. And then some people are more public about what they're dealing with. I myself I'm in that group. And it's I had a recent diagnosis last year of cancer, and talking about it online and being, telling stories about, what I've been going through, it's helped, people, talking and, just reaching out and that kind of thing has helped. If you followed Al Burrell on social media, the last, few years of his life, he was very upfront and shared a lot of deep, personal stuff that was happening to him. And, it was, Al Burrell, one of the strongest people I've ever known. And, if you knew him, one of the strongest people you knew, and so to watch him go through struggling, battling cancer was very hard, but also it was the amount of support he was getting from, because he was so upfront and honest, people talked to him a lot about it and were giving him a lot of positive reinforcement. And I think, that helped him a lot. I think, till his last days, he was the same guy as he was at the beginning of that battle. So yeah, but it was sad to watch that, of course. Last summer, friends came together to honor Mario Travers, another guy from the Boston hardcore scene who sadly died of cancer a few years ago. And it was an outdoor thing in Cambridge, lots of people, great food. They had live music, the Humanoids. The FUs played, of course. Bob and Barry from Orgasm, and Pat from Raw Radar War, who Mario played with. Did a set of Motorhead covers that was really fun, and it was just a great day to honor Mario. And I met his dad there, and it was nice to see, a parent see how all these people loved his son. So that's always nice to see that kind of thing, And it was just it was a fun day. It would be better to just have Mario there and all of us be at a show, but sadly, that's what this was. I didn't know Wayne at all. I saw him play with the FUs and the Straw Dogs quite a bit back in the day, And I believe most of the shows I saw, he was playing a Rickenbacker. And a lot of times I don't know if he had multiple Rickenbackers or two, but I know at one point one of them had a Raw Power sticker on it. And they were pretty, it was sort of the band at the time. Like when they played in Boston, the Channel in 1985, and it was an intense show. The FUs may have even opened that show, I don't remember. I remember bad things happened with bouncers at that show, which was a thing back then, unfortunately. But we survived. We're still here. From all accounts I've read today about Wayne, it sounds like he was, one of the nicest guys that you could know. I only saw him live, and my impression of him back then, and just the pictures you see of him, he's got this very warm feeling about him, just vibe. And, he's the first member of the FUs you hear on this record. In the first song here, What You Pay For, you hear his, that bass line, and then, that song, like the majority of this record, then erupts into chaos, and it's an intense record. And also, he wrote part of, I think him and Bob, I think it says in here, this is the original copy, by the way, wrote Unite or Lose. So, and that's one of the songs, when you hear that bass line, you want to throw a chair across the room, essentially. And he also wrote Poor, Poor, Pitiful You, which is a Poor, Pitiful You. Another great song on My America. And The Beast Within from Do We Really Want to Hurt You? These are all great songs. And, he's part of all of these records, So, I feel like with a lot of these bands, that's enough, he's all these. Today I reached out to my good friend Keith Bennett, who I've known for, as long as I've been listening to the FUs for, 40 plus years. Keith, another great bass player from Boston, and just all around amazing guy. And I asked him if he had any words to say about Wayne, and he was nice enough to record this for us. So.
Hey, what's up, guys? I found out this morning about Wayne's passing, and pretty heartbroken. There's not really much I can add that anybody else hasn't already said or will say. He was just a good soul, and sucks. He should be here. He was always kind. He was, I don't know, when people die, they tend to get instant sainthood, for better or worse, but Wayne really was a good man. He was a good human being. He had a good soul. And he was just a good guy. And he'll be missed. Wayne, thank you for everything you did for music. Everything you did for Boston, everything you did for people like me. I love you, buddy. Rest easy.
Thanks, Keith. I'm sure you conveyed the feelings of anyone close to him well here. Among Wayne's friends and people close to him, it sounds like he'll be remembered for the great person that he was. For me, his music, will be what I remember. Being part of this group of guys who, created all these songs that, have been part of my DNA for 40 years. I'll always have these songs that I still play to this day. So thank you for all the music, Wayne, and rest in peace. Who remembers when all the Boston hardcore bands went metal? Pepperidge Farm remembers. No, I'm just kidding. Some of us love this era. Some of us, didn't. I'm one of the people that did love this era. And the Straw Dogs record that I'm going to talk about here doesn't, this one, the EP, or mini LP as they call it, doesn't show up until 1986. So we'll go back a little to 1984. I don't want to talk about every Boston man because I have on this podcast plenty of times. So I'm just going to talk about the FUs and, SSD and DYS. These are sort of the main ones that, who changed pretty, not drastically, but more so than like Jerry's Kids, who just got almost even faster on that second record, Kill, 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 which I love. I love that record. SSD and DYS, they went for like a more rock and hard, hard rock and metal sound. And, I was a metalhead previous to getting into hardcore and starting to go to shows in 1984. So it made me feel okay to like that stuff still. Because, all my, hardcore heroes were, excuse me, getting in, playing this kind of, the same kind of music. I, sort of shunned for a little bit because I thought, now that I'm a punk rocker, nobody can, nobody can know I liked Iron Maiden or, Triumph or whatever. And, I love the, I did an episode on the second DYS record. And I'll probably do one on How We Rock or all the SSD records. I don't know. I do know that I read, Trust Records is releasing a box set. People were talking about, if How We Rock and Break It Up going to be reissued, and Nancy Burrell confirmed that she said there was a box set coming. So I don't know if that means just those last two records or, all four records. But I'll buy the shit out of that when that comes out. I have, I'm not even going to get into that. Everything Trust has put out has been great. Maybe they'll do these Straw Dogs records someday, or someone. Could someone put these Straw Dogs records back out? I mean, I have them, but I would buy them again. I'm one of those people that does that. Okay, so let's talk about the FUs. In my opinion, the FUs were sort of at the end of the day, I feel like they might be the best band of all these bands. First record, Kill for Christ, Puss Head cover. I love this picture. All these pictures from these, early Boston hardcore records, I always used to love just looking at and trying to figure out who's in the crowd and, like that, the picture inside the lyric sheet of Kill for Christ. I always love this little Mr. Meat, whatever the hell that means. And then the other great thing in this is the bottom of this lyric sheet, which, these were great to read when you were 14 years old at 56, with glasses that you haven't cleaned in 2 weeks. It's not as easy. But at the bottom here, it says, for any exclaim info concerning SSD control, for God's sake, don't write to Bob, write to Al at this address, 8 Longwood Ave, Lynn, Mass. Nice job by there. And then it says, confused? Good. But this record is amazing. Kill for Christ. It's their debut. Oh my God. This is the same one I bought, like I said. Exclaim number 2. I probably shouldn't drop it on the floor like that, because this is probably who knows. I don't even care how much it's worth, because I'm never going to get rid of it. And then My America comes out after that. And this record is, it's ridiculous, this record. And this is also an original copy. Exclaim Records number 5. And like I said earlier, that first song when Wayne's bass line opens and then it's just like right in your face. And this record doesn't let up. And we would hear sort of the beginning of, the rock side of the FUs and how good, John Sox could sing on their cover of We're an American Band on here. At least that's what I heard. Someone outside. And, yeah, amazing record. Yeah. And then the third record comes out on Gasatanka Records, which is this label that is part of Enigma Records, which was sort of a major label, or they had major label-like tendencies, maybe. And I don't know if you remember, there was a movie in 1985. There was a movie. You know the movie Return of the Living Dead, the zombie movie with the punk rockers. Young Fast Iranians is in that movie. It's not on the soundtrack though, which is on Enigma Records that they were on. Confused? Good. But this record, and also Gasatanka. This is actually my record. My copy has one of these Gasatanka. I love when you find like you still have these ads in the thing, and this is pretty funny. White flag. Due to an error by the pressing plant, our order for 1,000 more copies of S is for Space turned into 10,000. So we can pass this good luck on to you. The LP is now available via mail for $4. Is that really good luck though? A White Flag album? I don't even remember what they sound like. Maybe they were good. I don't remember. And then it has, the FUs, Do We Really Want to Hurt You LP, the third effort from Boston's Finest. I see what they did there. There's a song on this one called Boston's Finest, if you didn't get that little inside joke they threw at us here. This album features the boys at their best, including all their newest material. Watch for the U.S. tour and the album late August. This also says, we're planning a compilation album of straight edge bands. Please send your records and tapes for consideration. I don't know if that ever happened. I don't remember an Enigma or Gasatanka compilation of straight edge bands, but they did do those great flip side vinyl fanzine records, which I'm going to feature on here at one point. And actually the FUs show up on one of those, and those records always had skits, but before every song on there. And the FUs, I think the song on there is Young Fast Iranians. And the beginning of it is like Steve Grimes and someone else in the band like fighting and then like fake shooting each other. Psycho is on there, and it's I think the original bass player Bill. Is it Bill Normal or something? Talking about the scene and how come there was, we couldn't play shows anymore. Anyway, it was great compilations, and I'm gonna get to those at some point. But this album also, I always love this picture inside. You can see Ed Walters, and I think that's Bob Sensi from Jerry's Kids Up Top there, just jumping or dancing or something. And I also believe that's maybe Mark Tobio, also rest in peace. So yeah, I love this record. And, and this is when they started being a little more rock. They even, the second song on here, Rock the Nation, Noise of Today, Get Out of Our Way, Don't Make Us Slow Down, because we can't. And they didn't. Actually, they did kind of slow down, so what am I saying? Who am I fooling? They slowed down. So yeah, this record came out to mixed reviews. Do We Really Want to Hurt You? And I was along for the ride. In 1984, I was listening to a lot of this, SSD, DYS, FUs, Black Flag, Loose Nut, I think, Gangrene. And from, 1984 to 1987. I didn't get my license till right after high school. So I had to do public transportation to get into the city. And often, on the weekends, we would go to Boston, we would usually take the commuter rail. You'd go right from, I lived across from the train tracks, and the station was a few blocks up the street. And you could take that to Boston, and we would often do that, spend the day there and go to record stores and whatever else. And just do whatever shit stupid teenagers did, You could also take the bus, and there was two different buses you could take. There was the 442, which left from Haymarket and landed in Humphrey Street in Swampscott, and then straight into Marblehead. And I would take that one because that one ran more than this other one I'll tell you about. You really excited about the other one I'm going to tell you about? And the other one was the 455. That one went to Salem. And that one actually would drop me off closer to my house, as well as one of my best friends at the time, this kid, Mark McLaughlin. Mark McLaughlin's cousin happened to be Kevin Mahoney from the singer for Siege. So we ended up seeing Siege quite a bit at that time. And no, that wasn't just an excuse to, brag that I saw Siege a bunch. But yeah, I did see Siege a bunch. And they were as great as you would think they were. So the 442 bus, if you're a lot of times if you ever come back from a show, you might run into John Anastas from DYS, eventually Slapshot, and he'd always have like this fancy jacket on, And I think he was at the time he was working he lived in Marblehead, but I think he was working at a bank in Marblehead. But I would talk to him here and there, and at the time, nice enough guy. And Swampscott and Marblehead was a rival towns. At least that's who we played on Thanksgiving. And I also felt the same way with like hardcore kids, because Marblehead had a ton of them, and they were better at skateboarding. Swampscott, we had me, Al Quint, who at that time was 50. No, I'm just kidding. But he was much older, and I don't think he wasn't even in Swampscott anymore at that point. But I had his mother as a substitute teacher, which I've talked about on here before. And she had copies of Suburban Punk at the time. And my friend Peter Biebergall, who got me into punk rock, and then maybe a couple other stragglers. Marblehead had, better skater. That guy Jake Phelps lived in Marblehead. And I was also just kind of intimidated by kids in Marblehead. I don't know, they had sort of like a sort of tough blue collar. Marblehead was one of those towns where, Swampscott was like a money town. But it was sort of the town in between Lynn and Marblehead. I mean, it wasn't sort of. But I don't know, the Marblehead, I lived there a few years ago for about 5 years. And, I had forgotten, even though I spent plenty of time in Marblehead my whole life, I kind of forgotten that it was sort of a mixture of sort of rich people and then, blue collar fishermen and that type. And they mix well, it's just, and there's a lot of towns like that along the coast in New England. Anyway, so I was intimidated by a lot of those kids, and but I remember seeing this kid around who was this bald kid, skinny. He was always wearing a DOA shirt, and then I found out, his name was Bonesy, or Bones, a real name Chris Jones, and I finally at one point he was on the bus. I was coming home from a show, and he just started talking to me because he saw, whatever I was wearing or something. And, or just, at that time you knew. That was the time when if you saw like someone with Doc Martens, you'd be like, hey, what's up? Where nowadays, I'm in the fucking store and I see a guy with like a fucking Exhorter shirt on. I'm going to be like, hey man, what's up? And they're going to be like, yeah, okay, buddy. Get your fish sticks and get out of here. But yeah, so I meet Chris, and he's just a nice kid. And so from then on, I would always run into him on the bus. We would talk about music or skating and stuff. And yeah, and then he joined the FUs. And that was sort of like the big talk around, in my circle of friends, that, this kid that was the same age as us was now in the FU. So we're still a relevant band and about to change their name to the Straw Dogs. They put out, in 1985, there was a compilation record called Mr. Beautiful Presents All Hard. This guy, Steve Barry, put it together. That was Mr. Beautiful. And he recorded all these Straw Dogs records and a bunch of other stuff. And that was a pretty good compilation. It had the Gangrene and the Freeze on it, the FUs, and then bands like Last Stand, the Dogmatics, the Swingin' Eurydites, a lot more of like the rock Boston bands. But the FUs opened the record with the song In Deep, which would be re-recorded on the full-length We Are Not Amused. But this is the first appearance of Steve Martin, who also played an Agnostic Front and played on one of my favorite albums of theirs, Liberty and Justice. An album I like so much I got lyrics from it tattooed on my arm. You can't see them here because I have a hoodie on and I don't want to... Whatever. And this is also the first appearance of Chris Bonesy. And the song is great. It's a fucking straight up metal song, and I love it. And Steve Martin also is he started the PR firm Nasty Little Man, which the guy was in the Straw Dogs and AF, and then he's literally managing like Paul McCartney and the Beastie Boys' Hello Nasty is a reference to when you would call that office, they would say Hello Nasty. But we don't need to talk about him. We're talking about the FUs and Straw Dogs, more importantly. So this, song was a huge step into the metal direction that they would end up going into. In 1986, my world, this was one of the best years for music. There wasn't a lot of stuff released locally that year. Slapshot put out Back on the Map. And we had some amazing shows here, that Youth of Today show that they took all those pictures. It took the pictures for Break Down the Walls. That was in 1986 at the Rat. And that was a fun show. And, and I was at 16. I was 16 years old in 1986. And at the age where all of this music was absorbed into my soul forever, And so also in 1986, we get this record. Pardon me. 1986 was also one of those years you started seeing hype stickers on records. And, especially as, hardcore bands would get signed to records that, had good distro or that were like kind of major. But this hype sticker, I'm going to read this to you because part of it, the little quote they have about us, a review is weird. But it says, one of Boston's heaviest bands, Straw Dogs, were formerly known as the FUs. This album carries on the rambunctious, crank-it-up rock and roll. With powerful vocals from John Sachs and unusually witty and biting songwriting, Straw Dogs here establishes itself with a boisterous 5-song mini-album. I hate when they say a mini-album. On the Restless label, which profiles the band's blistering guitar rock in prime form. That literally sounds... Did they have AI in 1986? And then there's this little quote from something called The Morning Call. What is that? Was that a magazine? But it says, these guys correctly refuse to take themselves seriously, yet they are another faithful application of the inspired crudeness that has always distinguished great rock and roll. That's the quote they wanted to use on here. I like this too. It also says, also available on high-quality Cobalt CS1 cassette. Okay. Yeah. So why do I want to talk about this record when, these first 3 FUs records are, classic hardcore albums and, they put out this great full length after the EP. I don't know. This is my podcast, so I make the fucking rules here. If I want to talk about this record, I'm going to talk about this record. I did a fucking episode on the second DYS album, and nobody likes that fucking thing. I like it, though. That's why I did the episode. Go back and watch it. It was pretty good. I didn't talk about John Anastas's fancy jackets, though, on that one. But I did tonight. So, there you go. So this record, I don't know. I think this was sort of the first time, I was following this band for, 2 years at that point. And I loved when bands would, you could watch them progress. And, nothing on this record sounds like anything on, Kill for Christ or the stuff that was on, This Is Boston, Not L.A. or the song on Unsafe at Any Speed. Which, I just found out today. I'd never owned that record. And I found out that you can buy that record for, pretty sure it's not it's not $100 record. So it's under $100. It's not a $50 record, but yeah, you can get it. So I might, depending on what my tax return is, I might have to get myself a copy of that. Anyway, so, I loved when bands would progress. And, I always hear that stupid saying where there would be, say, this is, all these records these bands made is because that's when they finally learned how to play their instruments, which is kind of the stupid thing, but also kind of true. I think even like one of those DYS guys said that when they, when people were, talking about that record, they said, yeah, we just learned how to play better. And, when you learn how to play better, you learn how to write better songs. But at the end of the day, as far as I'm concerned, these are the, it is the same fucking band, mostly. But I can tell it's the same band. The cat is in the litter box. Hopefully that comes out on the video. So this record starts off with Trigger Finger, sung from the viewpoint of a guy who holds the key to the angel of death, as it were, a nuclear missile. It's got this, that catchy as hell chorus, "Here I wait," which is awesome. And the FUs have so many catchy choruses. It's, sort of a untalked about thing. Untalked about? Is that a thing? About the FUs. Because they have, a lot of catchy songs, like Naked Reagan does. And I love the best part of this song, I think, is the bridge, is when, John Sark says, and I feel like I'm playing God, but it's just a goddamn job, and you had all better pray that I have a boring day. I always thought that was a funny line. Because we didn't have a boring day, he might, shoot the missile up and kill us all, which, nowadays, it might be a pretty good fate. The next song is pure metal, Skull Garnish, which, the name of the song is fucking Skull Garnish. If it's not going to be a metal song, you would have failed. And this, the guitar tone on this whole record is very 1986 metal, pure 1986 metal. And, Skull Garnish has a sick breakdown, which, today kids would, do that, karate, crowd killing stuff to that part in the song. And just like they did on My America, they do a very straightforward cover of a rock song. This time they do Queen's Tie Your Mother Down, which I believe they played a lot live at that time. Side 2 has 2 songs, In the Shadow of the Maker, which is like an epic. It's epic because it's 5 minutes, which is epic for, these kind of bands. But it does have like an epic feel to it. And this is like a cool song. And then it closes with another version of Young Fast Iranians. I prefer the one on the FU's record, but, this is, any version of that song is awesome because it's a great song. And like I said, this record holds no place in my life for, any real reason, except it's just, I don't know. It's been in my life forever, and, you know, people can argue it's not the best release by any of the, you know, out of all of these by this band. But that's not what this podcast is about. We talk about records. And, you know, this record, from the freaking cover of it to, you know, if you were into Judas Priest at this time, you know, this kind of thing was all the rage. And then this picture on the back, that's pretty metal. And you can see Bones is wearing his DOA shirt there. Sadly, in 1986, May 1986, and I remember the day well, I was walking down the hall in Swampscott High School, junior year, you know, a few weeks before we were going to graduate. And a friend of mine, Danielle, who I think was friends with Chris, came up to me. Her eyes were all watery, and let me know that Chris had been killed in a car accident the night before. You know, I had never experienced death at that time. And, you know, I wasn't good friends with Chris in any way. You know, I was just knew him. But he was another hardcore teenager from the hardcore scene. And he was living his best life. He was playing in the fucking FUs, one of his favorite bands. And, you know, his death, the circumstances of that accident, you know, could have been prevented. And the Straw Dogs, you know, said that in the liner notes of the record, the full length. You know, they basically, you know, told this guy to R.I.P. Rot in prison, the guy who was driving the car. But, you know, sadly, you know, we never got to see what Chris would have done, you know, because he would have been, you know, one of those sought-after drummers in the Boston scene for years to come. And so it was very sad to experience that as, you know, a teenager. And the Straw Dogs talk about it on the back of this record. As usual, fate has the last cruel laugh on us. On May 1st, 1986, shortly after the basic tracks for this album were recorded and its cover art commissioned, Chris Jones, a.k.a. Bones, our indestructible 17-year-old drummer, had a sudden meeting with the Grim Reaper. His immense talent had been obvious to us and to everyone that knew him. We present the proof here on these grooves for all the world to hear. It is to his memory that we fondly dedicate this album. See you later, Bones, the Straw Dogs. And this, you know, maybe I should have talked about this record instead, but this record is, you know, it begins with Chris, his drum beat at the beginning of Carnival in Hell. And, yeah, this record is fucking great. And another one, the sticker on the front of this one says, Consumer Dearest, and I wonder if they regret having something like this in here. We know of nothing on this record that could possibly be considered obscene, distasteful, or offensive. However, since none of us are right-wing evangelists, feminists, or homosexuals, your opinion may differ. Love, the Straw Dogs. P.S. Lyrics enclosed. And if you know the Straw Dogs, a lot of dark humor, a lot of sarcasm. So, you know, this is a joke. You know, they're not hateful guys at all. They never were. And they, you know, they caused controversy when they, you know, put this record out, and they had the ad with the, you know, the skater on the dead on the ground, and yeah. So, but you know, they were just always a funny band. They always had like tongue in cheek with a lot of their stuff. So yeah, Straw Dogs, the FUs. Let's call them one band for now. The Straw Dogs played a couple of reunion shows in the last, I don't know, 8 years or something like that. I saw them at the Middle East, and Steve Martin played with them. And I believe they played last summer up in Lowell, Mass, maybe, that I missed. And the FUs, you can still go see them today. They're as active as ever. You know, I saw them twice last year, and they played the Mario tribute thing, and then I saw them up in Kingston, New York. and they were great. It's John Sachs, Steve Grimes, original guitar player, Bob Hatfield, Bob for Apples on drums, and then they have Slade Anderson, who played guitar in the later Straw Dogs, and then my good friend Ian King is now playing second guitar for them, and he's been with them for a while now, and it's another sort of the same thing with like Chris, like Ian and I've known him since I was 14, and we were going to see the FUs back then all the time, so it's cool to see him up on stage now playing with the FUs. So cheers, Ian. He's one of the better guys you can know. Good dude. I'll throw a brief video up from the show up in Kingston at the end of this video. So yeah, if you don't have this record or the full length, you should change that. Definitely both worth owning. You can trust me. When have I ever let you steered you wrong on this podcast? Never. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you, Keith Bennett, for the words earlier. And I'm certain there's a lot of people out there that feel the same way as Keith does. And so thank you. Rest in peace, Chris Jones. Rest in peace, Wayne Maestri. And also, fuck cancer.